I make a motion.
Motion, second.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Hubbard, second by Councilmember Grau. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Your agenda adopted. All right, we'll move on to visitor presentation. So we have Chief Seibert and Julie Janke recognizing Mark Jones' 10 years of service.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for giving us a few moments here to recognize the service of Mark Jones to the CERT team, which I can tell you both in my time here in Chaska and also in my previous department that I worked for as an auxiliary member or a volunteer member of an organization. The service that's performed is invaluable both to the community and the police department, just in terms of special events where we need additional resources, and then also during COVID-19 and the pandemic, just the invaluable service during various food drives, vaccine drives, mask drives, certainly perform a very valuable service to the community. And I know, Julie, you had some things to say.
He's just been outstanding. He's the commander of our team, and everyone loves him, and we're gonna miss him dearly. I already told him that, because he's just very organized and keeps everyone on track. And tonight he's actually been handing out new CERT manuals to everybody on his way out the door here, because he's going to Utah on Wednesday. So, but he's dedicated. It's just been an outstanding 10 years of service to our city, and as Chief said, in just various city events, and just we will miss you. So big shoes to fill. So you've been great, so thank you.
As a small token of our appreciation as a department, it doesn't do service to all of the work and the volunteer hours that you put in, but we do want to present you with us to recognize your service. Very much appreciate it.
We're gonna go down and have cake.
Well, real quick, if you don't mind just sharing, I don't know if we said it. Oh, yeah.
Yes, Mark, come on up here.
You want to share too what CERT stands for?
So CERT is our Community Emergency Response Team. So we have 20 volunteers in our community that are our CERT members. So we should recognize who's in our audience also as well. So Patty Tollickson, who was a familiar face, a former city employee with the city of Chaska up at the community center. And she's been a member already 4 years already. Chris Kelly, who's been here 10 years already. Same as Mark, so she was one of our original team members, so Chris Kelly. We have Lou Henry, stand up. He feels bad he was not in his uniform this evening, but his wife is in the car. He just came from the hospital.
Oh.
She just had a pacemaker put in. So we're like,
Oh, jeez.
dedication. Here's another dedication. One of our dedicated members. And then Chris Catholic, and he has been an awesome member also as well, one of the originals also as well. So, but we're very fortunate as a city to have these guys, and like I said, they did training for, and Mark can tell you how much training, it was lots of weeks, and they go over all the training on if a disaster happened in our city, a natural disaster. Thank goodness we don't have a lot of natural disasters, and so that's why they're at food distributions and helping with traffic details or at city events and other things. They've done CERT patrol, so they've actually taken a squad that we put CERT on it, and 2 of them have to go together. So they've just done a variety of different things in our community, and again, volunteering their time. So they all donate hundreds of hours every year, and Mark's donated thousands of hours over his 10 years of service. So.
Wait, does that mean Mary has to go too?
I know.
I mean, Mary's like our most prolific exerciser in the community. You see Mary running or walking or whatever every day. So we're gonna miss seeing you around town.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll miss it too. And they're leaving for, they have kids and grandkids. That's very important. So, as we all handle this stuff. All right, well, let's get a picture. Are we starting this way?
We can just go right over there.
Okay, let's go over there. We'll go with the rest of the team.
Yeah.
Put it on all the way.
Oh, I think you're later. Oh, okay, I thought you were going. team in there too?
Yeah, all you guys are here, come on. Lou, we'll put you in the back.
Well, there's like things action happening in the back, and the stuff you're like, oh, wow.
Yep, come forward.
Oh, sorry.
All right, one, two, I can see your hand.
Yeah, good, yes. And Patty, the most impatient person in the group.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I don't see any other visitors for visitor presentation, and I think our Zoomers are for our action items, so. We will move on to approving the previous meeting minutes. There any corrections or anything on the meeting minutes? Otherwise, I'll take a motion.
I'll move to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from August 16th.
All right. Motion from Councilmember Hubbard.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Wong. All right. Any discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right. They are approved as printed. All right, we'll move on to consent items. So as we know, these are items that don't necessarily need discussion, just approval. So you can certainly discuss any if anybody has any questions.
Move to approve consent.
All right, motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hubbard to approve consent items. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? All right, consent items are approved. Moving right along, on to our action item tonight. Adopt Resolution 2021-55 World Learner School refunding of Series 2011A.
Mayor Pro Tem and council members, the item in front of you tonight is, as you can imagine, in this environment, refinancing current debt obligations is a good opportunity for groups. We do have the World Learner School located here in Chaska that did work with us back in 2011 to issue what's called third-party debt. So it's basically conduit debt where we're not obligated as a city to for any repayment of it, but in essence, we play a role in it because we have to be able, it has to be issued in our name, and we have to agree that we're going to allow that. So it's really, it's a mechanism to make sure that that these types of things are issued in the community and that the community wants it. Obviously, World Learner School has been a great addition in our community and offers alternative opportunities for people to send their children for school, and they're looking to refund this debt now. We do have Nate Canova, who is part of our bond council, and Noel Graysick, our finance director, has been working on it, and Deanna is representative from World Learner School. So maybe I'll turn it over to Noel, and if there's anything in particular you want to point out.
Thank you, Matt. Mayor Pro Tem, council members. As Matt outlined, this is conduit debt. As a part of this refunding, the city, there's really two steps. The World Learner School needs to work with an entity to have the issuance authority. We've done this with them in the past. For this refunding, they're working with the city of Cologne. This was a discussion we had in terms of some of our issuance authority for some debt issues that we were anticipating later this year. It's quite common, as long as the World Learner School serves a broader market, that another locality can be the conduit issuer. So this is how the World Learner School has worked with our bond council to prepare for the issuance of this 2021 series. Since the school is located in the city of Chaska, what we do need to do is have a public hearing to take comments from the public on this proposed refunding. And then there'll be a resolution that the council will be asked to consider that would give consent to the World Learner School moving forward. Nate Canova, as our bond counsel, reviews these documents, and he's prepared to answer any questions that may come up during the public hearing tonight. That's it.
Anything else, or otherwise I can go ahead and open the public hearing, basically?
It's, just a quick question. On the agenda, it does not actually list the action item as a public hearing. Is that an issue?
It's not an issue as long as we hold the public hearing.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, well then, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at 7.
And I should
Oh, yeah.
real quickly mention, it was advertised as a public hearing. That's why it's not an issue too.
Okay.
So we can go ahead and open that now at 7, well, now 20, for the World Learner School refunding of Series 2011A. No one? So, we just go ahead and close it? Do I have to wait a minute?
You guys don't want to speak against it, do you? On Zoom? No.
Perfect, well, we'll go ahead and then close the public hearing now at 7:21. Thanks. All right. Do we have, is there guests on Zoom you want to say anything, or? We're good? Okay.
Yeah, I don't need to say anything. I think Noel, all but having maybe his law license, I think he covered everything I would have covered. There is no liability to the city, so we reviewed the document that was published as required by federal tax law and state law in the local newspaper more than 7 days in advance of that point. So you're covered and the city's protected, and we'll carry the transaction all the way through to closing. If the council approves it, we'll make sure that any certificate the city needs to sign limit its liability.
Well, then we can, if there's no other questions, we can go ahead and, I'll take a motion to adopt resolution 2021-55.
Open for discussion.
Yeah, if there's,
So,
Oh, I was just gonna say, I appreciate, Noel, you explaining it. I was a little confused about the city of Cologne. I was like, is it moving? You know, so I appreciate, and thank you for shaking your head to clarify it too, because you're a very, very welcomed asset in this community. So I just wanted to ensure that. So I appreciate the explanation, but I have no other questions on it.
questions or discussion? All right, well, I'll take a motion now.
so moved? Oh, sorry.
Motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second.
second by Gra, Councilmember Gra. All right, if there's no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right. That passes. That was our only action item, so we will move on to bills.
I have a few quick questions. Page 5, there's one for Becker Arena projects, or products. And there was one there was a 41,000 something for Clover Ridge Hockey Rink. What was needed for that?
So as part of our formerly known as capital improvement program, now known as CAMP program, one of the items in our list of projects this year was to replace the boards out at the Clover Ridge outdoor rink. If you've seen those recently, they're in terrible condition. So basically they're due to get replaced. We ordered them, got those on order to bring them in so that we can be ready for the winter.
Okay, cool. On page 2223, there's our attorney, Melkert Hubert Chozine. There was one for Cortina Woods preservation. What was the preservation work that was done?
So it was in regards to, there's a tree preservation easement that is in between the homes, basically in there. There was a dispute by a neighbor about one neighbor violating the tree preservation easement, and the person violating the easement doesn't agree. And so so it's basically legal work in relation to us basically administering our tree preservation easement, because the tree preservation easement it's in the city's name to preserve it, so we have the obligation to have to administer it. I should point out that that's one that we actually have been served notice from the property owner that because they don't agree with our decision, that they're going to be taking us to court on that. This is one that we actually submit into the League of Minnesota Cities, and they actually defend us through the insurance trust for that.
So our attorneys don't actually get involved, it's actually the league's attorneys.
It's actually the league's attorneys.
terms of-
When we started the process, it was our city attorney, because it was simply a matter of going and actually, administering, being able to, indicate that, hey, there's a violation here. So those are things we do on a day-to-day operational basis. But when it turns into them saying, no, we don't agree with you, it's a legal issue, then that's when we turn that over to our insurance trust, and then the league actually assigns attorneys then to actually defend us in that case.
Okay. So in the case, and not necessarily specific to this, but if someone says, okay, there's a tree preservation, they go cut down a tree, and the neighbor says, no, you weren't allowed to cut down that tree because it's by enforcement by complaint, right?
Yeah.
Then the city would get involved, do research, and that's where the fee comes in, because there's the cost of doing the research, to understand what the easement is.
Yeah, and most of the time, we just do that by staff. This one became a little contentious right off the bat, and so that's why we got our city attorneys involved in that process. There was disagreement. It wasn't until that we were actually served notice, so that we actually, legal notice of an actual court pending process, that we actually got the league involved.
Okay.
So typically, we wouldn't even get our city attorneys involved in that, because it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's basically.
There's a line where the tree preservation easement is, and if you cross it, and take down a tree, it's in violation of that, preservation easement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
You've been working more with it than I have. Does that summarize it pretty good?
Yeah, that's a good summary. I think there's an interesting component of this of, looking ahead to the future, if tree preservation easements are something that are needed, the discussion about who's best placed to be the enforcement authority of that. It could be the city, it could be the homeowners association. I don't know if there's one better than the other, but I think that's an important discussion and consideration to have, if we get into a similar situation in the future where that's being proposed.
Which is kind of interesting, because not every community or neighborhood necessarily has an HOA. So for example, in Cortina Woods, there's a covenants involved, but then the only enforcement of the covenants is for one homeowner to take legal action on another homeowner, which can get really sticky.
Well, and that's exactly what part of the issue is here too, is that the covenants do require legal action against neighbor. Yep. This is not the first time we've had issues with tree preservation easements before. We've had anything from minor to major issues that popped up. We had one out on Lake Bavaria where somebody basically removed every tree that was in an area. That did go to court, and they were actually required by the court to restore the area. So they had to replant many trees. So it's not an unusual thing for us to address. But you can imagine it's one where if neighbors care about that easement, and they see their neighbor going in and actually cutting down a tree, we hear about it.
Just unrelated but related, because I think it's interesting if you think about how this plays out. Maybe I'm thinking it wrong, but as we know, as a council, several months ago, we looked at chicken ordinance. And we talked about some of the concerns we had as a council was HOAs and covenants, and I mean, I would see that same situation playing out, right? Like, my neighbor has too many chickens and we have to step in, and then, am I looking at that correctly, that could be something similar where the city has to get involved? And
It could be. I actually view the tree preservation easements though as being a lot more black and white though.
correct. Yep, I agree,
That
there's a
that
line.
it's,
But still gets that sticky situation, because I think, I mean, for me, it's good to think that way, because, we talked hypothetical during that time of like, what could happen? And you always think, well, that's never gonna happen, and here's a good example where it's very black and white. There's a line, as you said, there's a tree, don't cut the tree down, and it still happened, where other ordinances or legal requirements are more gray, and then that just becomes more complicated at times. So I was just kind of curious, because to me that, somehow I made that connection back to chickens, but it just kind of illustrates that some of that the city has to get involved in.
I will say
Causes fees, per
most code enforcement stuff that we get into, so most of the stuff, I shouldn't say most of the stuff, any of the stuff that our CSOs get involved in with code enforcement, they all are like this. I mean, there's, you know, because you can imagine the person whose neighbor, you know, calls up on them, and then we show up, they're not happy about it, and they don't agree with it. And so, you know, most of the things we can talk through, and by the end, we come up with a good solution that's amicable, and that they say, okay, that seems reasonable, we'll go through and do that. But there's a handful of cases like this where it's like, nope, we're not going to allow the city to come in and tell us what to do. We view this as our property, and so few of them get to this point, but there's lots of issues that we deal with there like this.
So last question, page 43, there was one to Wheeler Lumber for a replacement bridge for something, and it was truncated. What was the replacement bridge for?
I believe this one was another one of our capital improvement or camp program.
Yeah.
Was replacement of a bridge on the ravine system.
Okay.
That would have been sort of part of our trail rehab program.
Okay. There you go. That's all you got.
Okay.
Any other questions on bills? All right. There's a motion to approve the bills.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hubbard. And Nate, if you'll call roll.
Councilmember Hubbard,
Yes.
Councilmember Wong,
Yes.
Councilmember Grau,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Hatfield.
Yes. All right. We will move on to other business. So Councilmember Hubbard, if you want to go first.
Sure. Don't have too much. I was part of the Steiner Kelting Mental Wellness Facility group, and I'm happy to report that the facility did slate to open on September 8th. It sounds as though that did happen. They did decide to forego having some sort of open house, even as an invite only, just due to the Delta variant with COVID. And they were opting to do a media tour. Whether or not they did that or not, I'm not sure. But that is kind of where things stand with that. So I mentioned just the amateur baseball tournament being in town the last 3 weekends. Yeah, I think.
Yep, last weekend was the last weekend.
I think it was amazing. Was down there a few times here or there, and congratulations to all those teams. And that was just such a great feeling and vibe being down there, just watching baseball, people enjoying themselves. So, and then managed to just be over by the Loop the other day and see progress there. That's very exciting. So I don't know if where they're at as far as in terms of progress, but it looked exciting.
They're at a point where we'll see some seed start to get put down within the next probably week or two. You'll see that we'll end up having to overseed it again next spring. Because there's going to be some winter kill that ends up happening with that. And sort of the last big major grading piece to finish up is the Himalayas green, which is closest up to 100 mark. The basics of that are laid out, but it needs sort of the final grading. But if you go out there and look now, all the tee boxes and greens and everything, they're pretty much ready to go. So.
Yeah, no, it really looks like it's shaping up. It looks fantastic, so very excited for that. Food distribution event happening on the 16th here, which is this Thursday, from noon to 1:30 at the former Gedney Factory pickle site. Sounds like they still maybe need a few volunteers, but I mean, obviously welcome to attend that as well. I think that's pretty much everything on my list, other than I've just seen like a lot of really horrible car accidents. Like, I just think people should slow down. I know we can all be in a rush to get from A to Z, but you definitely don't want to see anybody injured from a car accident, so just would love if people would slow down. That's it.
Perfect. Councilmember Wong?
Yep, then I think I saw to that last note there, like, was it Carver County Sheriff or someone posted either that or the State Patrol, I think,
Oh,
posted something about there was like,
yes.
they caught someone doing like 118 in a 60-mile-an-hour zone, so it's certainly far in excess of that, so that's far beyond safe or prudent. Let's see, so the Taste of Chaska was just a huge success. I mean, it was just, fantastic turnout. It was, great to see a lot of people out. A lot of people came by the booth and took advantage of the free light bulbs from the city, which was a great thing to, get those out in people's hands. And also likewise, the farmer's market was, wrapped up last week, and it was great to see the farmer's market had a really good run this year. A lot of really strong attendance. It's also back to school for all the kids in Chaska, so, for all the kids and students as well as the teachers and staff. So want to wish everyone a welcome back to school. And congratulations to the Chaska Hawks football team on beating Chanhassen and bringing the jug back home. So that's a nice little good way to start the year. And of course, this weekend is Christmas in May, so I think all of us are going to be participating in that.
Being so sad.
Not this year. Most of us will be. We'll be thinking.
That makes it
They're
better.
rubbing salt in the wound.
We'll just have to bring like a little representative of you somewhere.
Right,
Yes. And
If
then
your mom wants to, she can.
I'll let her know.
All right.
Then on September 25th, there'll be the Fall Festival and Oktoberfest at City Square Park, which is starts at 11 a.m. for the Kids Festival, and October 15th and 16th is the Fire and Ice celebration as well. So it's the Fire and Ice celebration on Bonspiel at Fireman's Park. So it's only Friday and Saturday for the community celebration.
Yep.
But the Bonspiel goes through Sunday.
Yeah, Bonspiel actually starts on Thursday and goes through Sunday, so that's actually a 4-day event.
Yep.
Is fireworks still in the plan?
Yeah, in fact, so Friday night will be sort of the typical fireworks.
Okay.
Saturday night's going to be a little ramped up because it's the fire department's 150th. And
Is it
so
like
they-
dusk or what time?
Typically start right at 10.
Would it still be 10 o'clock
Yeah.
even though it gets dark?
Yeah, I'll
faster?
confirm that with Marshall, but I think it will be 10 because it also coincides with the band's playing too.
Okay.
But I'll confirm
I
that.
mean, that was my piqued my curiosity, because normally this is a
You know,
July
I
thing, and when
guess
it's the longest light of the year.
Yeah,
but
I guess I never
That's not
gave
going to be
some
October, it's
thought
going to
to
be
that
6
is-
o'clock when
yeah.
it gets dark.
Yeah.
So,
That's true.
He looks like he wants to say something.
I've been in some planning meetings with
Yeah.
Marshall and his staff, just on the policing side of it. I believe the fireworks, or the time is gonna be changed to about 8:30.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. So they'll have band after the fireworks then too.
Or set, if you will, of the
Okay.
band afterwards.
thank you for
Okay.
clarifying.
So it's like, so I'll assume that it's going to be publicized, that way people know.
Yeah,
We're
that's,
like, what, the fireworks are starting?
Well, that's.
I hear 'em.
That's as I fold my laundry. What time would the fireworks
Yeah.
be at?
but it is the, 150th of the fire
Yeah.
department, so that's gonna be part of the celebration for that, so.
Tim definitely doesn't look that old.
No,
Wow.
surprisingly.
No, so that's like, congratulations to the fire department for 150 years of service to their community. That's like amazing. Just like, because there's very few fire departments that have been around that long, so at least in
Yeah,
that area.
1871, so it was a full 20 years before we incorporated it as a city. And we're the third oldest founded city in the state, so we had to be one of the first fire departments.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that fact.
Not incorporated, founded.
Found it.
Yeah.
That's a fun fact.
Yeah.
That's a cool fun
That is a
fact.
very
I'm
fun
kind of wondering
fact.
who number 1 and number 2 are.
Stillwater
Stillwater claims it.
and
Big sign.
St. Anthony. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
the river. Yeah.
That's interesting. Very cool. Also congratulations to Eder Castillo, who from the Human Rights Commission, he resigned, but because of good reason, he's gotten married and moved. So congratulations to him, and certainly wish him the best in his future adventures. So it's a happy news. Great reason to lose somebody is something to move on with a new chapter of their lives for a happy reason. Southwest Transit, State Fair Service was really successful this year. We had, this year we actually ran a full schedule on the weekends, and we also ran bus service throughout the week as well. And we provided 38,557 rides this year. And so those are full 2 weeks. We only ran to 7 p.m. on that Monday. But in total, it was about down 66% from the all-time ridership high in 2019. So, but that also reflects too that the attendance of the state fair was down 40% this year. So those numbers were pretty much in line with what MVTA saw as well as Metro Transit. So it's not like unusual given the circumstances this year. But in the big scheme of things went really smoothly. The team received a lot of compliments from riders, and most importantly, everyone got home safe and sound, and they provide like a great service to our community. So that's that's pretty much all I've got.
Perfect. Councilmember Grau?
Just a few things. We all must be thinking safety of travel, because I had this in my head, I promised, before you brought it up. I was just gonna mention back to school, obey stop signs and arms on school buses, be mindful of children walking at bus stops, in particular when that S word starts to fly and ice forms and all that type of stuff.
I was like, what?
I could think of another way to describe it that starts with S.
After I saw your reaction, I was like, I didn't want to say snow.
I was like, wow,
this
like-
early, okay. Note to self, just say snow, don't say, got it, okay? Got it. But just be mindful of young children walking and drop-offs and pickups, and, the thing that just drives me crazy when people go around stop bus arms with school buses and everything like that. Just, you're not in that much of a hurry to hit a child or a walking parent walking home. It is, I will say that my encounter with safety is better now that County Road, Jonathan Carver Parkway is completed, but it still can be dicey because they're still doing some work there. So just be patient. You'll get there in time, or get up earlier. I was going to comment about amateur baseball. I thought it was really cool just to see they set their goal, or a goal that I saw published, was 20,000 fans across the 3 sites, and they were able to achieve that. Chaska being the highest of that. But yeah, just a fun event to kind of bring people to community. I watched, I don't know, the team's going to leave me, but they're like they had like a 10, it was my first volunteer, and it went late, and it was like 10:30, and I was like, oh man, I'm really tired, and realized that their fans, it's where Dick Bremer's from.
Yeah, it's the one that played
Yes.
Loretto.
Yes, I can't think of the name, but they're basically on the bump out in Minnesota, like, where by Ortonville area, where it kind of bumps out.
Oh, I took pictures.
And their
of
fans
Loretto.
were driving home. They like rented a bus, and fans were driving home, just like, I don't know if, and it was like, it wasn't a championship game, but it was just impressive to see all the fans. Shout out to all the volunteers. This isn't a pat me on the back volunteer, but lots of volunteers, right? Amazing show. Community supports it. That doesn't happen. It'd be fun to hear, and I think we'll maybe see some of that through the baseball association that I'm connected to, just like the amount of food that was served. So I was there, the Sunday for the champion stuff in Chaska, and they were like running and grabbing buns places because they had run out of some stuff, just to kind of keep just the amount of food that got served was super cool. Fun to see the kids run and get foul balls and everything like that. So super fun atmosphere. And so that was cool, and I hope they come back soon. And then lastly, just a recognition of 9/11, the 20-year anniversary. It's interesting because I was a junior in high school when it happened. And I remember in my classroom not knowing what was going on. I'm not
Just had a
aging.
sick look on his face.
I was a 7th grader.
7th grader.
I was in
But having the conversation with my kids this week was interesting because they just were very interested in they always my kids look at me anytime there's something, because I'm the crier in the family. It's weird. Like military and stuff like that just pull at me. So they're always like, something will be on TV and they're like looking at me like, Dad, are you crying over there? I'm like, just watch. But just kind of an interesting perspective of kind of talking on heroes of police and fire and the people that ran into the building to help save lives. And just hard to believe that it's been 20 years. And, I thought there was an interesting kind of story about 9/12 that was actually aired before the start of the kickoff for the football. The NFL had talked about people coming together on 9/12 the day after and some of those things too. So just, I just think it was a good reminder, and I know this probably gets overplayed a lot, but just a conversation of how people came together to support. And we do live in a very, right now, kind of a divided country in a lot of aspects. So it's just kind of a good reminder to, we've seen tough times and we've gotten through it. So just wanted to recognize that, because it does not feel like it's been 20 years, and my kids think I'm old as a result of it, but not as old as some.
Well, I can tell you where Noel and I were sitting in that conference room for a staff meeting when it happened, so that's how old we are.
I was in homeroom, yeah, I was in homeroom, and I ran cross-country at Norwood Young America, and no one really paid attention to what was going on. You just kind of went through the motion, and then I remember pulling back into Montevideo on the bus and like the lines at the gas stations, because everyone was then worried about gas shortages, and you're just kind of like, this is weird. And I talked to my kids just a little bit, like, someday you'll be 20 years from now, they'll probably talk like the pandemic about it. But it was kind of one of those generational events that happened in like my life that I'll never, exactly where I was, what happened, and kind of what I see. And so they thought that was interesting. I said, truthfully, like right now, when you think of your lives growing up, like the pandemic is that for you guys. Like that's your kind of generational moment right now. And hopefully that's all the generational moments in history that they experience. But just kind of some really cool things. And, hearing some of the voicemails get played that people left loved ones, that's what pulled me, because I just can't imagine calling your family and your kids and basically saying goodbye, and some of those things you're just like, oh. So, all right, enough sad news. That's all I have.
All right, Nate, anything?
I don't have anything to add.
All right. Any staff, anything? Okay. Well, just sort of on that same topic, it was in the bi-weekly, but 9/11 is a good example of when this happened, and I want to thank the fire department for the display they put on 9/11. That's what gets me crying. I'm always like, I think I watched it in my car and I was just bawling. But deploying 2 firefighters down to Baton Rouge for the hurricane, that is just an example of when we all retreat and our first responders rush in, and that's an example I would want to be nowhere near that in Baton Rouge, and our sending 2 firefighters down. Like I said, we all retreat and they rush in, so thank you to those. Giving up 27 days, I didn't realize it was such a long time, but
it's a really long deployment. That's the mayor, actually, when he went on his deployment for Hurricane Katrina, went down for 27 days, and he said, you wouldn't believe how long that gets. You think, 27 days, but he said, it gets to be really, really long. Yeah. But they, I don't know if you saw, but there's a tropical storm heading in that direction, and so them being down there is going to be a great help, because really what their main duty is going to be is to relieve the fire stations, so that you can imagine the firefighters that are down there, their homes got destroyed, or their home, so in order to make sure that the continuity of service, we provide the continuity of service so that they can have a month to be able to go and really try to get their things in order.
So thank you to the fire department for doing that in 150 years. That's a big deal too in the community. So the only other thing I was going to mention was just Oktoberfest and Guardian Angels having their event September 25th that weekend, which is a couple weeks away. But that's always a nice time to get downtown and go shopping and, eat at the restaurants and go to those events. And it's always a good time. So that was the only other event that didn't get mentioned. So that's all I have. So with that, take a motion to adjourn. So motion by Councilmember 1.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Graf to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Oh, aye.
Oh, aye.
All right, meeting adjourned. So we have an EDA meeting after this. Oh, I got up too early this morning, I think, so.
Just a reminder, now you gotta not call us council members,
Right,
commissioners.
thank you.
The president, Madam President.
President Pro Tem.
Madam President.
Madam
Pro Tem.
President.
Yes.
Pro
Oh,
Tem.
that's a
I
mouthful.
gotta add a few more words there. Just a heads up, next
Okay.
week I'll be
Oh.
good.
Yep, go ahead.
That's fine.
Remember, you're supposed to count to.
I know, I did in my head. Kevin's giving me the good.
10
So we'll
to
go ahead and, we'll just, call the EDA meeting to order. So Nate, if you want to call roll.
Yes, Commissioner Hubbard,
Here.
Commissioner Wong.
Here.
Commissioner Graw,
Here.
President Pro Tem Hatfield,
Here.
and President Winchell is absent tonight.
All right, so move on to adopting the agenda. Just one thing on it. Any
I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
motion by Commissioner Hubbard,
Second.
second by Commissioner Graw. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Agenda adopted. All right, moving on to approving the previous meeting minutes from the EDA meeting on July 19th. Any corrections or additions to those? If not, I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to approve the July 19th meeting minutes.
Motion by Commissioner Hubbard,
Second.
second by Commissioner Wong to approve the July 19th meeting minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? All right. Those are approved. All right, moving on to our discussion item, letter of intent with Lariat Companies for 3.72 acres of land at Chaska Boulevard and Fire Lane, which is where the former building center site was.
I'll turn this over to Nate.
President Pro Tem and Commissioners, the item in front of you tonight is a letter of intent. This is with a group that staff have been working with for the last few months for the site that is off of Fire Lane and Chaska Boulevard. So this is thinking back to the former Chaska Building Center site, which is now home to DDK and the cabinet shop, and then Formicote next door, which would be the most recent redevelopment that occurred on the site. So as you continue to march east, we now have what is a blank property there. That property with the Formicote project was cleared of all the cement and bituminous and everything that was there previous. So right now you just see, we'll call them wildflowers to make it sound nice, growing there right now. So what is being proposed for that remaining piece is on that 3.72 approximate acre site is a building that would try to maximize the square footage that we can fit on that site without getting too far in the details of the planning process. We're thinking it's something like a 40,000 square foot building. What Lariat Companies would like to do with that building is to have it be a small bay industrial facility. So, you know, approximate 2,000 square foot, give and take, units that would be available in that location for small businesses to operate out of. So you think about the person that's running like a CNC machine out of their garage, or maybe they're doing online retailing and they need that space to be able to, you know, keep their goods, you know, outside of the home, that sort of a thing. And then, you know, there's all sorts of other examples that I'm probably not thinking of too. So that would be the use of the site, and with the intention of what they want to do. This group recently did a similar project in Waconia, and so they built a much smaller version of what they're going to be pursuing on this site. But what they did find is that it was very well received. They filled it up very quickly, and I'm not personally surprised to hear that, because I do get calls quite frequently from groups that are looking for, you know, 2,000 square feet, 2,500 square feet, something in that area. And although that does exist in Chaska, it's all taken, and there's not a whole lot of turnover with that. And so it's very difficult for people to get that sort of a space. I think for the city, as we look at it, and the EDA, the goals that we've had for the site is to create jobs there. We want to create daytime population that supports the downtown business community. And so by doing something like this, I think that becomes achieved. If you think about the number of jobs that were created at the Formicote project, and the number of small bays that would probably be created out of this, you kind of do a quick math in your head. I think you end up with a similar job creation, if maybe not even more, on this site is what we were able to achieve at Form Code. I think the other thing that's really good about this is it's a really good opportunity for us to be supporting the small business community, get people to be in a place that they can grow their business and hopefully move on to bigger space in Chaska too. So it becomes sort of a type of a incubator type of a space, ideally, that gets created there. So with that, the letter of intent really mirrors what we did with Formicote. We basically took how that was set up and how we did the nature of that deal and copied it for Lariat and what they're proposing. The idea there is that we want to be consistent. It's the same redevelopment site, and so we want to be treating everyone, with a consistent approach and policy there. So we would be selling that property for $1.50 per square foot for the property, for a total of $243,065. The city would then, we've got a TIF district there, we would dedicate TIF that gets generated by this project to help with the purchase of that site. Some of those, that TIF revenue would also go to offset the area fees that would typically be charged to a development. So the TIF can be used for that. And then also to recuperate the costs that went into the pavement removal that has already occurred on the site. So we're able to make ourselves whole from that effort. So with that, I guess I would ask the EDA to consider authorizing the EDA President Pro Tem to sign the letter of intent with Lariat. If you do want to proceed in that way, I think you would expect to see Lariat moving forward pretty quickly with some site investigation. And then their objective is to be able to break ground next spring. So hopefully, we'd be seeing something come through the planning process over the winter time. If there's any questions or comments about that?
A couple questions.
Yeah.
When the businesses move in to these industrial slots, are they under our downtown business alliance? Like, is that special tax district? Does that run all the way out there?
Right now, it does not.
Okay.
No.
It basically ends at the creek.
Yep.
So basically we define our downtown by the two creeks, so the one by Arby's and the one by the bus garage. That's sort of the east and west.
Okay.
And then the river and
The clay holes.
the clay holes
Yep.
on the north. Or actually the bridge going up on 41.
Yep.
I'm just curious. If it ran into the district zone, would it be considered under it, even though it's zoned industrial, or no? Is that not a consideration?
Yes, I think it would be part of that.
Okay, just
Yep.
more of my curiosity piqued out of there.
Yep.
And then with these, so it's industrial, but would any of these people have like a portion of it be a retail? Is that not allowed, or?
I think that's something that we're going to be looking at, is what uses would make sense and what combination of uses could make sense. Part of it is as soon as you start putting retail in there, you're going to start driving a parking demand.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be something with the developer to take a look at, what are you trying to achieve as far as, getting the square footage on there versus parking availability, and how can we create that balance? I can tell you, retail has not been the objective of that site.
Sure.
And so I don't think that's going to be the focus.
Okay, I just didn't know if there's
I
stipulations
personally
on it
think
or-
parking's gonna be the big driver there, because with a 3.72 acre site and getting 40,000 square foot building, they're maximizing that with the parking just for industrial use.
Right.
So I think if they want, because it's not unusual, like Nordic used to have it with the showroom that they had up at, where you could have like the product you make there, that you also have a showroom
Yeah, like
that
an
you can
outlet
sell.
center.
An
of
outlet
sorts.
center.
Yeah.
But the parking was, I remember when that place was open, there was a big parking lot that served that. So typically parking sort of knocks that out of contention.
Okay, I just was curious.
Yeah.
And kind of piqued my curiosity. This is very exciting though, as just to commentate on it. Yeah, I think that, the square footage and I think it really, it fits a need. I think that, and it's attainable, and it's a ground level sort of entry into a lot of businesses. So I'm excited.
Yeah, we have seen, if you look at economic development in Chaska over the years, the companies who have started small here tend to grow here. And, they're the ones that end up, going from, a 5,000 square foot building to a 20,000 square foot building, and then up to a 50,000 square foot building. And so, and then you just sort of rotate, and then you always have sort of this life cycle of industrial uses out there.
And that's not unusual. It happens, a pretty common thing in the commercial real estate market to see that, and that's why there's a lot of communities really kind of focus on those smaller ones initially, because then they're easier to get. But then that'll give them an opportunity, because ultimately you want to keep as much business within the community, because once they start a business, then a lot of your employees either live in the community or live nearby. And then as you grow, you're not going to want to relocate your employees or start over again unless there's some huge tax incentive, right?
Well, and we've actually been the beneficiary of that from Eden Prairie.
Yeah, for sure.
Where there's one building in Eden Prairie, now Stratus is in it, but I call it the Chaska Incubator, because the number of businesses that have been in that particular building that have eventually ended up in Chaska. I mean, it's because they don't have any more buildings. And so they want to expand, but it's not that big a deal for them to expand into Chaska if their employee base is in the Southwest Metro. But they're not going to, if they're in Woodbury, they're not going to, relocate to Chaska, because now they have to get a whole new employee base again.
And I think too, as our community grows and our surrounding communities grows residentially, I mean, it makes sense that we should have, industrial infrastructure in place to have these businesses come and then have the employees draw from these communities. So.
Well, I think there's also that benefit too of now 212 is being widened out to North Young America. That's a huge gain in terms of accessibility for greater Minnesota too. That makes us a good destination spot for these businesses that are growing businesses that are looking to be at a hub or transportation corridor.
And we also draw a lot of employees from Norwood, Belle Plaine, Cologne. Businesses like to be on that edge because they get sort of that secondary farm economy that is a good source of employees for them.
Absolutely. A lot of good reasons. There's a lot of good things that work in our favor. Like they say in real estate, location, location, location.
Any other questions? All right, if not, we can make a motion. Yep, go ahead.
I'll say so moved. Oh, I'll move to approve the letter of intent for Lariat Companies.
All right, motion by Commissioner Wong, second by Commissioner Hubbard. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? All right, approved. All right, any other business for EDA?
Luke's not here to ask.
Luke's not here.
No,
All right, well then.
we're not going to tell you what question you
When is that
asked.
Costco coming in?
Well, there's also another one too.
It's the
Oh, I thought there was another Costco. I was like, we're getting two
I don't know which
Costco?
one's
That's gonna be rumor now. All right.
Put this way, he tends to like fried chicken.
Oh, no, Hy-Vee, let's ask about that too.
Yeah. All right, well, if there's nothing else, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Graf,
Second.
second by Commissioner Hubbard. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.